this last Shabbat of the year together. Why don't we start with the nigun and ground ourselves. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Once again, my name is Rabbi Yosef Goldman. In a moment, we will have source sheets with tremendous gratitude to Victor and the entire staff here at Romemu for all of the support that is constant, that is not seen from the Bima. But what we are going to discuss today is covenantal relationship, which we see coming up many times in the Torah. When we think of covenant, what is the first thing that comes to mind? Biblical covenant. Bris Milah, which is a brit, the covenant of Milah, the covenant of circumcision. Wonderful. So we have a brit that is given to Abraham between Abraham and individuals. What other covenants do we know of in the Torah? Well, what is the first covenant even before Abraham? Something that shows up, a sign of it shows up from time to time in the sky. Rainbow. Right, so Noah is given a covenant. Thank you so much. A covenant that God will not destroy the world again in the flood of the rainbow. And then we have the covenant, a collective covenant in the book of Exodus, at Chorev, Sinai, the covenant of the Torah. Come on in. Yes, the access to the source sheet that will be coming in just a moment. I apologize for the technical difficulties. Yes?
Could I just suggest, as we get the source sheet, it's the practice of our class to say the blessing before we start studying the Torah?
Wonderful. Yes, let's do that.
It was delicious, but...
That's a wonderful thing to do together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam אשר קידשנו במצוותיו וציוונו לעסוק בדברי תורה. Amen, amen. Once again, yes, there are source sheets that will be available for folks online in just a moment. So we were just mentioning the Brit of Sinai, which brings us to this week's parasha. So for the past month plus, Moshe has had the people gathered, this second generation of Israelites. I mean that in the sense that the people, if you think of the people becoming a nation through the miracles of the Exodus, and then receiving the Torah just less than 2 months later. And 40 years later, we have the second generation, and Moshe has gathered the people and been speaking to them about everything that has transpired from the Exodus on, reviewing the history and values, giving some more laws that will be pertinent for dwelling in the new land, right, in a very different relationship with the divine. No more manna, pillars of cloud, pillars of flame, but fields and farming and land ownership and rains. And here we are at the last day of Moshe's life.
Hi, Yosef. Sorry to interrupt. There's a mic in front of you. Could you potentially push it a bit away from you? We're just getting a bit of distortion on the end. Just like the mic, yeah, just a tiny bit.
1 2 1 2 1 2. Thank you. How's that?
Still a bit distorted. I'm gonna ask Victor. That's not your fault. Thank you.
Hello, 1 2 1 2.
Okay, a bit better. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor. Brings us to this week's parsha.
So sorry. Now could you push it back to you? I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry about this. Thank you.
1 2. Hold on. 1 2 1 2. Victor, stay there for a second. How's that?
Sorry. Now you're a bit quiet. Yeah.
Okay. 1 2 1 2 1 2. How's that, friends?
It's a little bit more on the quiet side. Apologies. Yeah.
1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. How's that?
Victor's still a bit quiet. Yeah.
1 2. Is that better?
Yeah, that's better. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. Okay, so now we are Moshe's last day at the end of last week's parsha. Let's take a look at this source sheet. Somebody like to read just from the beginning, the italicized paragraph here at the top before source 1. Yes.
As the people stand on the threshold of the land, Moshe gives detailed instructions for a dramatic covenantal ceremony they are to perform upon entry. They are to set up large stones inscribed with Torah, build an altar on Mount Ebal, and there, with all the tribes gathered between Mount Gerizim and Mount Ebal, the Levites will proclaim blessings and curses. This ritual marks their arrival not just as a people with land, but as a people bound by covenant. Their faithfulness carrying consequences of life and blessing, their betrayal bringing curse.
Okay, that's the context that we have here, and we will take a moment. So does everyone have a source sheet at home? Can we put this in the chat and have access, or is it just up on the screen?
It has been shared. Also, this is the reminder to the people in the room, make sure you speak into a mic. Thank you so much.
Okay.
This is the second mic, so if somebody wants to talk from either side, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so going forward, I'll just read everything myself and save a little bit of time. But it's on the sheet, so if everyone can be able to take a couple of minutes and just quickly read through this text number 1 from chapter 27 of Devarim. So in a moment, let's discuss what it is that Moshe is doing here. What is the resonance of this activity? So this is pedagogy, this is ritual theater. Right? What is the symbolism? What is the emotional impact that Moshe is going for? What is he trying to teach them? Yes.
Emphasizing the territory, the land for the country. As if, it was the customs
He's emphasizing that the territory
as a country,
as
you
the
know.
country.
I grew up in Detroit. Here we, and the bridge is a thingy that says, this is Canada. Now you are entering Canada.
It's a landmark that is designating the transition from one distinct space into another. You're entering into the land. It just looks like more desert on the other side of the Jordan, but you're going to erect a monument that marks that you're entering into a new land. Wonderful. Yes, Brenda.
Yes, that the first thing they have to do is honor God. That's the very first obligation that they have to do.
First thing they have to do, honor God. Wonderful. Yes.
You
The
you could
microphone.
say that it's analogous to the threshold marking at the Passover, at the very beginning of the story.
Interesting.
Because you have to do something to mark that transitional space.
Seeing you're seeing a parallel with Passover, which also involves marking a threshold.
Yes.
You're saying it's a transitional space.
This stone cairn is the giant mezuzah, right? At the place of coming and going.
A giant mezuzah. And what is a mezuzah? It marks the transition of coming and going between one space and another. Beautiful.
I just had an insight that I've never had, and I'm very old. A land overflowing with milk and honey is also the transition to farming. Because the milk is what they've always done. They've always had these sheep. But the honey doesn't mean honey from a bee. It means honey from a particular plant.
Mhm.
And so that's the plant, that's the agriculture that is being cited. They didn't have honey before, because maybe they took something that grew spontaneously. But the milk definitely was in their control because they own these animals. And with the honey, they'll be able to plant vegetables and stuff, and that will be
Beautiful.
in their control.
So Moshe spoke about the land as a land of flowing with milk and honey. He spoke about it as Eretz Chita, Usora, etc. The seven species by praising the land, by describing the bountiful produce, the crops, the sweetness. Yes, he's transitioning them, beautiful, to living in an agricultural society. Okay. Yes, please.
I've never understood the relationship between the two mountains.
Mhm.
I don't know if they're like right next to each other or this is usually you wouldn't expect it right next to each other. But there's something really grand about the scene if you're on two different mountains.
Yes.
Yes.
They are right next to each other.
Yeah, so we've got visual confirmation that they are, in fact, right next to each other with just a valley in between. So in some ways, this is not unlike what is we see in other Near Eastern cultures of ratifying law by establishing blessings for those who follow and curses for those who violate it. But this is much more of an elaborate embodied ritual that Moshe is laying forth. Yes, please.
Well, you know, it's also all good storytelling. There are moments where it makes you wanna go back and remember things. I'm your father, Luke, you know, it's like that kind of moment where you go back and this, you know, all these names or who actually is on which mountain makes me wanna go back and see why one is on the blessing and one is on the curse.
Okay.
That kind of-
So,
And the
yeah.
only other thing I want to say was what you were saying is that, this is they're entering lands where, you know, it's the Hittites and those people who laws of Hammurabi were in that area, and everybody had steels for those stones that they had, where they put up the law of the land. You know, so it's very much in conflict with that.
beautiful. So the first thing that you were saying, you know, we've been talking about what would be the effect, the impact on those who enacted this ritual. We're also thinking about, I'm sure Moshe, we put ourselves into the mind of the character of Moshe. It's also thinking very much about posterity and the generations who will be reading this, including this fifth book, which contains so much of Moshe's thought. You know, so here we are, the readers. It's evoking memory of and thinking about the characters and the tribes and wanting us to go back and jogging our own memory. On that note, let's turn back to the covenant of Sinai. So this is Kitavo. We will in a moment look at Nitzavim and how Moshe is continuing to focus on reaffirming this covenantal relationship. Let's take a moment to look back at Sinai, and as we're looking at Nitzavim, see if we can think of any parallels in ways in which we feel like Moshe is referencing or maybe also expanding on that Torah covenant. Source 2 on the bottom of page 2 and the top of page 3. We have here before the Ten Commandments at the foot of Har Sinai, chapter 24, Vaikach Sefer HaBerit Vaikra Ba'oznei Ha'am Vayomeru Kol Asher Diber Adonai Na'aseh V'nishma. He took the book of the covenant and read it aloud in the hearing of the people, and they said, all that Adonai has spoken we will do and we will hear. So I was asking, what do we know or think in this interaction about the relationship that is reflected in this framing of Israel's response? Na'aseh v'nishma.
Well, I know my Orthodox friends always explain to me that that means you do all the laws, just do them, and then later go back and figure out what you're doing.
Okay. So according to maybe some traditional perspectives, I mean, do, and then come back and see if maybe you'll find an understanding of why you're doing. Just throw yourself in, immerse yourself fully, and then listen. Any other thoughts? How might this be landing today?
And the way it's being explained to me is that it corresponds to an ethics of action, and that an ethics of action is prioritized over a catechism or a faith statement or indulging the mystery of the inner life.
An ethics of action, which is saying, as opposed to some sort of catechism, some sort of religion that is based on accepting principles of faith. And sorry, what was the last thing you said?
Just, to indulge only carefully the mysteries of the inner life.
To indulge only carefully the mysteries of the inner life. Those are two distinct things. Very interesting. Yes, I mean, we don't see until Maimonides the idea of principles of faith that define a proper Jew.
Yeah, not a good development, if you ask me.
So the question is was that a good development? Was that a good development? Was that in fact Moshe reading exegesis or eisegesis? Was he reading that into the tradition or out of the tradition or from the tradition. Wonderful. We'll just say that as opposed to the previous covenants that we saw, that we mentioned, the Brit of Milah, the circumcision, the Brit of Noach with the rainbow, or also in chapter 14 or 15 of Genesis, the Brit Bein HaBetarim, when after the war between the 4 kings and the 5 kings, when Abraham had this vision between the 2 pieces of a cow, in the middle of the night, this terrifying vision that included the promise that Abraham's descendants would go down into the land of Egypt and be there for 400 years, and afterwards would go into the land. These are one-sided covenants. This is God coming down and saying, here's a covenant. This is what I'm promising you. Sinai, Mount Sinai, Horeb, is different in the sense that to a certain degree, there is consent. It is a brit that is defined by 2 unequal parties, right? There is obviously a power differential, but there are 2 parties that have responsibility to one another. It is a binding, it is a binding agreement of mutual responsibility. And I'll say as an aside for, yes.
I was gonna say, can't you say the same thing about the second set of tablets?
Can you say the same thing for the second set of tablets?
Being that the second set of tablets were made both by Hashem and man together.
Can you say more about, so what is the question that you have? You mentioned that the second set of tablets, the first set of tablets were
Only
Were
created from God.
given to Moshe, meaning that they were from above and hewn by the hand of God. And if you, based on a close reading of the text, the second set, Moshe brought up these stones from this world. So what is the question?
In terms of a Brit, in terms of a covenant, that the second set of tablets was more of a covenant than the first set because it was both God and Moshe.
I'm so sorry. Can you step more towards the mic, please? Thank you.
Okay, I'll just paraphrase this thing. Since the second set of, you want to say it again?
That the second set of tablets was more of a covenant than the first set, because the second set were created by Moshe and Hashem.
Okay, wonderful. So there are a couple of things that I'm hearing in your question. First of all, the level of participation. The investment is different. In some ways, it shows a different level of assent or consent in the binding relationship. So I'll digress for a moment and say that the rabbis were bothered by certain aspects of Sinai. They describe in the Talmud, in Tractate Shabbat, they describe the setup of receiving the Torah as essentially God taking a giant barrel and holding it over the heads of Israel and saying, I have a wonderful gift for you. And if you accept the Torah, great. And if not, this will be your grave. There are many different ways of understanding that. The one that resonates most with me, for me, is the one that says that there was not essentially free will. Essentially, it was not free will for Israel, because if the tradition is that Israel saw God in some aspect, heard the voice of God, saw the voice. Maybe they just heard the first aleph of the Torah, not Torah, the Torah begins with a bet, but Ten Commandments, Anochi, begins with an aleph, which sounds like it's all but not a sound, and still they lost their souls. But if you are seeing God, if you're seeing God as God is in truth, there's no way that you can choose otherwise. The truth of it is so blatant. And so it was as if they were coerced. And we'll see, maybe there's a different aspect of it here. And then just to cut to the chase of that, that section of the Talmud, they talk about how in Purim, when there is, in the whole Megillah, you see God's name 0 times. And it says it was a miracle of our survival, but hidden. That was actually when the covenant of Sinai was complete, when they're able to fully accept this relationship with a God that was not so plain to see anymore. So yes, it has to be some level of mutual participation.
It's say coerce.
Coerced.
Yeah,
Coerced.
say that again. I mean, what?
If
What were
you
you talking about?
if Israel saw, the rabbis in the Talmud say, if Israel saw God in God's fullness, and God said, do you want to enter into a covenantal relationship with me or not? The immensity of God's presence took away any free will. So it was as if God held a barrel over their head and say, if you don't receive this, you will cease to exist. Only when God is, when we can turn away, ignore, choose to conclude that that God's is not present, or that God's presence has no bearing on our lives, can we say that we are accepting this covenantal relationship with free will? Yes, follow-up question.
So, I just saw a similarity between the Garden of Eden
Okay,
in the sense that people were, the humans were making a choice to go against God and exercise free will. So I don't know, I just saw some kind of a parallel.
can you say more about what this parallel?
I don't know.
Okay, something about, right, something about, so we're getting at the fact before in the garden, before the taste of this Eitz Hadat Tov V'Ra, whatever that means, this tree of knowledge of good and evil, there was a state that they were in where they could not possibly have turned away from God, which, thinking about it, maybe in a spectrum of being towards the angelic. There's a reason that the Midrash, again, the rabbis of the early rabbis are talking about why the Torah was given to us and not to God, and not to angels. You know, why would you want to enter into a covenantal relationship with beings that mess up? I mean, look at the world that we're in now. This is humanity is who you want to partner with to perfect the world that you've created. And in a nutshell, it comes down to a level of free will. But yes, in some way that is also an essence of the story there.
But by definition, you can only enter into covenant with
Let's pass the
someone
microphone.
who has free will.
By definition, I think that's what we're saying, is that you have to enter into a covenant with someone who has free will.
Precisely. So to enter into the covenant is by definition to accept that they're going to mess it up.
In entering into a covenant, number one, by definition, means that you have to have free will. Both partners have to have some sort of a free will to accept. And so if you're entering into a partnership with someone that has free will, number two, you're saying is accepting that the other person might mess up,
Yeah.
and let you down,
Yeah.
and violate potentially terms of the agreement. anyone who has been in a long-term committed relationship, be it romantic or otherwise, business, friendship, knows that this is true. Okay, we have a time check because I do not have my watch on. What? 9:20. Okay, we're moving along. Source number 3, remember we said what happens, there's two, so we have 2 sets of luchot. We also have the second set of luchot appears in Moshe's retelling of the Torah. So we have 2, like so many of our stories, we have 2 sets of stories. We have the story that's to be a kind of in real time, in when we're reading the narrative in Shemot, and we have the retelling in Devarim. Here is an aspect that Moshe adds in the 5th chapter, the Parshat Va'et Hanan, when Moshe is retelling the story. Adonai Eloheinu karat imanu berit bechorev, lo et avotenu karat Adonai et habrit hazot, ki itanu anachnu ele po hayom kulanu chayim, which translates as Adonai our God made a covenant with us at Chorev, which is another name for Har Sinai, as we understand it. Not with our ancestors alone did the Lord make this covenant, but with us. We, all of us alive here today. Since we don't have all of Shemot 22, 23, 24, I'll say that in fact we don't see anything comparable in the original story. So I'll ask you, Moshe, the teacher, speaking to the children of those who stood at Chorev, who are about to go in to the land without Moshe, in a different paradigm of relationship with the divine. Why might Moshe choose to emphasize this particular point?
Which point?
That the covenant was not only between God and those who were assembled at the foot of the mountain, but with us, all of us alive here today, all those who are the second generation, Asher Chaim.
One might think of a covenant as being between those parties who sign and ratify the covenant. And Moshe says it is transgenerational. It is for all generations, and not just my generation while I'm alive, and not just your generation, but even when I'm gone and when you're gone.
Beautiful. So why would you say he's doing this?
Concerns après moi, ... He sees that there will be times that things will fall apart when he's gone.
Mm-hmm.
And he wants a longer arc of history that includes commitment and recommitment to the covenant in every generation, getting an extra boost in the time of Mordechai and Esther, Kimlu v'Kiblu.
Yes, beautiful. You can imagine the anxiety of Moshe as he sees the grains of sand in his time with Bnei Israel running out, and his anxiety as a teacher and a leader to ensure that the continuity of all that he's been teaching. Yes, let's have the way.
Boy, that was hard. I was going to say, I think I remember I'm going to call it a midrash. I might be misquoting here, but not only were the Am Yisrael at Sinai, but all the Jewish souls that would ever exist were at Sinai.
Okay.
So
yes.
it was a covenant for all time.
Beautiful. So this is what we're getting at. We don't see that in Shemot. We see the beginnings of that right here. And we're going to see it even stronger in Nitzavim, and then the rabbis picking up on that theme. Say exactly that the souls of all Jews, the descendants of those at Sinai, anyone who has chosen to tie their fate with Am Yisrael by becoming a Jew of choice. All of those souls were there. So not only is this binding for all generations, but that the people who actually the souls that heard it the very first time include all future generations. I'll just say that there's yes.
I wanted to say that Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to make sure that his last 40 years was not for nothing.
Exactly.
Yes, I'm not gonna be there, but I want my last 40 years to count for something. And hence, through the entire book of Devarim, the one common thread in every single chapter is the discussion of some form of avodah zorah, of idolatry, in every single chapter of Devarim.
Okay.
Because Moshe remembers the first time he left them, they built the golden calf. And so he knows that and every time things went bad, they say, we want to run back to Egypt. And so he understands the mindset of the people. And so hence the emphasis through the whole book of Devarim is to prevent avodah zorah and idolatry, and hence the reason why it's talked about in every single chapter of Devarim.
Beautiful. He wants to make sure that this is not for naught, and he is concerned about particularly the weaknesses that he's already seen. The one I would say maybe the one thing that Moshe cares more about than seeing the land is ensuring that the people that he has been leading take all of the experience with God to heart.
If I can just jump on that like a cat on a sunbeam.
Yes, and then we'll continue.
I love the reference of the golden calf, because I've been puzzling about the little details in our original passage, that this monument of stones not be too well made. No iron can be used on it. They can't be hewn stones. They have to be a little rough. You can put some plaster on them, but it's not about the beauty or the craft of this object. It's kind of the minimum possible, and the max. They're not quarried or hewn stones, so they're just like part of the land.
So it's not about the beauty of it. Then what is it about?
Yeah, in theory, I suppose the content, right, not the form.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, I want to jump to some contemporary sources. I'll just say outside source number 5, which is our parsha, and then we're going to go down. Thank you to Caroline for holding this the Zoom source sheet. I'm just going to describe this outside, and then we'll go down to the bottom of the page. Moshe says, after the blessings and the curses, after he tells them about this ritual, he says, you are standing firm, all of you today, and he focuses on inclusion. Regardless of your status, of your gender, of your age, everyone is in the covenant. And then 13:14, and not with you alone do I make this covenant and oath, but with those who are standing here with us today before the Lord our God, and with those who are not here with us today, which the commentaries are very clear. He's referring to future generations again, and that's picking up on how Moshe has already told us to expand our understanding of Sinai. And we are, what time are we concluding?
10 o'clock.
9:45, 10 o'clock. Okay, so we have another 15, 20 minutes. So, okay, we're going to look quickly at 4 contemporary thinkers on this, and then we can expand to discuss it and see how it's landing for us today, this idea of being in covenant. Would somebody, maybe somebody who is online would like to unmute and read Rabbi Jonathan Sachs from the essay To Renew Our Days in his Covenant and Conversation series. Okay, maybe someone who has in either online or someone in the room who has a microphone. Someone like to read this for us.
I could read.
Thank you.
Richard.
Again, we're source number 6 on page 4.
The covenant at Sinai was a moment in time. The covenant of Nitzavim, however, is timeless. It binds Jews of all places and all times and turns Jewish history into a joint project between the generations. The real question of Jewish continuity is not what happened, but will we continue? Hashem calls on us in every generation to continue the story of our ancestors. We are free to decline, but doing so means denying part of who we are. There is a chapter only they, our children, can write.
Wonderful. And before we discuss that, would somebody like to read this excerpt from an essay from Hadar's 2022 Parsha series from Rabbi Aviva Richmond?
Yeah, I'll read it.
Yes, thank you. Can we pass the microphone?
Way over there. Error is hardwired into humanity. Parashat Nitzavim introduces the concept of teshuvah. Unlike a one-time covenant that could be shattered by sin, here we glimpse a covenant of resilience, a relationship that can be renewed again and again. A life of Torah is an ongoing cycle of discovering blind spots and trying harder. Although we will sin and face the consequences the covenant holds, we can always find our way back. The mitzvah of teshuvah is not beyond us. It is within our reach.
Wonderful. Thoughts, any reflections on these 2 excerpts? Lori.
I really react to the blind spots. It's almost like we're always in a process of tikkun olam and discovery, even though in the high holidays we really, really emphasize it. We keep discovering ourselves year after year by peeling out the layers of our unconscious, the parts of ourselves that we were not conscious of, that we do through relationship and prayer, so that we can have all our human emotions and still be with God.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. And yes, this is the last thing we read, the last Torah portion we read before Rosh Hashanah. Yes,
this is so beautiful because here you have a covenant which has mutual language. You have mutual obligations on both sides, but one side is always going to end up breaching because of human nature, those covenantal obligations, and yet built into the system. And what ensures that it will go from generation to generation is the built-in ability to have teshuvah all the time.
Beautiful. Teshuvah is built in, allowing us to have that the space and permission to explore and know the freedom that comes from knowing that you're going to mess up and being able to keep striving without fear of breaking the whole thing. I mean, Rashi picks up on the fact that this comes right after, I think Rabbi David mentioned this yesterday, right after this whole litany of curses. And he picks up on that juxtaposition and reminds us that, yes, this is very much cognizant of the fact that you're going to keep messing up and having a chance to return to the covenant, to return to yourself. Yes.
I'm very curious. Oh, whoops, sorry. I'm very curious as to whether in modern times, if there is a covenant declared, the same, oh, you messed up, it's okay, we'll try again. Whether that ever occurs in modern life between nations. The United Nations has a term, covenant. And if you look in their, their yearbook, they'll tell you how many covenants were signed. But boy, if somebody messes up and comes in with a tank, I don't think the UN can say, oh, it's okay, you messed up. We'll
Yeah.
try again.
Well, the beautiful, beautiful. So I think that first of all, it's a wonderful question. This whole
Yeah.
this paradigm of binding covenant, where it's understood that people will mess up. There is, of course, consequences, and the curses are still there.
Oh, yeah.
There still is, the exile. If you don't live in consonance with that, with the divine on the land, with God on God's land, then there will be dislocation, exile, but there's always the promise of return and reconciliation. And what would it look like if that was part of how nations, groups of people related to each other now, instead of just saying this is over,
Yeah.
you are done, you are canceled, any sort of
Yeah.
positive aspect that existed in our relationship is irrelevant in the face of this breach. I mean, I think about the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in South Africa as a model for.
Absolutely.
I love that, both holding the value of truth and repair with what is it that's in Proverbs, truth and peace are hugged, and chesed and peace, chesed and justice are kissing, and holding these two sides together. And what do you think would we be gained if the world was able to have this sort of covenantal paradigm? I'm asking you, what do you think? What do you think would be gained in the world by learning some more from this?
I think it's more realistic and people could get with it very easily, Otherwise, you hold grudges. Remember what you did to my ancestors 75 years ago. Yeah, I think you're right. The South African paradigm is wonderful.
I'm going to read these two sources because they're important, and then we can expand for our last final reflections. Nechama Leibovitz, one of a master teacher of Torah, and again the commentaries in Tanakh, Israel, late 20th century. There's a whole study of the covenants, all of them that we were discussing, and points out that the Torah stresses inclusivity here so that no one can say, I am exempt. Everyone from the greatest to the most significant is bound together in responsibility. And then the great feminist scholar, Jewish studies professor Judith Plaskow, in her seminal book, Standing Again at Sinai, it's at Sinai, women were present, but absent from the central categories of the covenants. Yes, women are included in your Tabachem Neshechem Begercha, your children, your wives, and the converts. To stand
Mhm.
again at Sinai means not only to affirm our presence, but to claim our power as interpreters of Torah.
Mhm.
That this, as it goes through the generations, to fully recognize that what it means, yes, it's already embedded that everyone is present, but we have to take that to its fullest extent and um, allow for everyone who is present to be fully fully present, to have a full voice, that the full represent, they say Shivim Panim La Torah, there are 70 faces of Torah, kind of implies like a circle with a full 70 people is the number of fullness. We have a central point, and everyone that's standing around is a different perspective on this center, and you cannot have a full view of the essence of what you're looking at unless everybody's perspective is heard. Okay, so here we are on the eve of Rosh Hashanah. We're on the eve of Rosh Hashanah, and every year we hear of Moshe reminding us that this covenant is reaffirmed as if Nitzavim is happening every year again and again, to renew the covenant, to bring each generation, all of us in. How might we use this part of Devarim and the Torah reading today to prepare us for Rosh Hashanah? I see a hand from Richard.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that God seems to recognize the flaw in the initial covenant at Sinai, and he expresses that to Moses in Devarim 5:26. And I'm not sure what God does about it. He says, if only their hearts would keep all my commandment, I'm sorry, would always remain this way, when they are in such a state of awe of me, they would then keep my commandments for all time. He recognizes that their hearts are not going to always be in such awe, and so he sees the flaw in the whole covenant, and yet I don't know what his plan is at that point in Deuteronomy.
Interesting. I would say more the tension. Maybe a flaw, maybe a tension. Can you really be in a partnership with someone unless you, so to speak, are fully introduced and see them as they are, which is a paradox because of that awe and free will factor. But could it have been otherwise, or was it necessary to start with God, so to speak, revealing God's essence, and still that being both necessary and insufficient? Thank you, Richard. Anyone else? Or yes,
Oh, okay.
and then Ashraf.
Sorry. Not so learned, but I don't know, I find, at least from where I came in just now, that there's a certain optimism in terms of how we can come into Rosh Hashanah and the return, that
I had a problem with thin settings. Interesting. Can I start video?
It's okay. Yes, please
Okay.
continue.
Certain
Certain optimism.
Yeah, there's a certain optimism, a certain movement. Well, we need, we won't see something until all 70 voices are looked at. And, I'm just dealing with the cacophony of life today. And that allows me to experience all of those different voices. And some of them don't make me very happy, but still to feel optimistic that that I can still, and we can still make our journey back in as best we can.
Beautiful. It's hopeful, it's optimistic that we can make our way back. Yes. I'm sorry. Asherheim.
Oh,
And then we'll
sorry,
be Victor.
Rasherheim, okay.
Thank you. As we're getting towards the end, first, I thank you for all of your Torah today. This is a wonderful session. I'm always struck by the intertextuality of the curse at the end of Leviticus, Vayikra, and the curse near the end of Dvarim that we read last week. And in Vayikra, we read dozens of verses about terrible things that will happen, and then a promise that God will remember the covenant and we will be restored. In last week's terrifying episode, the story ended with our people being sold back into Egypt as slaves that nobody even wanted to buy. And then the portion ended with, this is the covenant. So here we finally have the closing of that chapter. And I realize it's a covenant / teshuvah sandwich.
Beautiful.
Because between the curses and the restoration is renewal of covenant and our teshuvah. Shuv occurs, someone told me, 7 times in this densely packed piece. So we have so much more agency in this Deuteronomic gift that Moshe gives us before he leaves the scene. And as you mentioned, it's so appropriate for reading right before Rosh Hashanah. I thank you again.
Thank you. That is beautiful. Yes, at the end of Vayikra, it says, even with all this, in enemy lands, I will remember you. V'zacharti lachem berit rishonim. I will remember the covenant, not just the covenant of Sinai, but the covenant of you were children of the ancestors with whom I initially made this covenant. And if you're looking at these in parallel, yes, I love that. This is the parallel to that, the comforting reassurance of the lasting bond. And Teshuvah, a little preview of what I'm going to say in the introduction to the Torah, doesn't say anything about Teshuvah as the mitzvah that we understand it through the rabbinic lens. But yes, this is understood to be the source of the mitzvah of tshuva, that is all that Moshe is talking about, either specifically or writ large, the concept of being able, no matter what, to return and repair. And yes, we have 2 final comments, and then we will move towards our tefillah together.
Not for this class, but for some class. I'd like an exploration of very modern approaches to the following situation. You've known some Jewish person, worked with them for like 7 years and didn't realize that they are Jewish and were sent to Hebrew school. And now the reason you find out they're Jewish is the adult child comes to a meeting that has nothing to do with religion and says, oh, we're Jewish. And here I am, and they've got a baby on the way. In modern times, do I open my mouth and say, hey, guys, we're doing Rosh Hashanah a meal tomorrow night. Do you kids want to come? I think that would ruin my relationship with the woman who is totally decided that that's not part of her life.
That is a beautiful question. I love the sensitivity.
Yeah.
And yes, there are certainly competing values, and I have some thoughts. I'm sure that Rabbi David and Rabbi Diane and Shimon have thoughts as well, and it's a very important conversation.
Good.
I'll just say, al regel achat, on one foot, that in inviting people into to have a delicious meal can never hurt. And one final comment. Yes. And while you're getting the microphone, I'll read this from Laura. It says that there's a wonderful, rich comments here. Lori writes, resolving conflict with love and respect and emotional respect and resilience is the core key to healing trauma, developmental and relationship and archetypal trauma. The deep unmet need between people and in families are the ability to stay grounded and embodied and connected to emotions and feelings as well as thoughts and attitude. Remain honest and authentic with love. Yes. Paradigm shift of love and connection. Yes.
I think there's no coincidence that supposedly the second set of tablets were brought down by Moshe Rabbeinu on Yom Kippur, which it's the ultimate tshuva,
Beautiful.
the ultimate tshuva.
That's a great note to end on. Based on a very convincing reading of the dates of the timeline, 40 days up in the mountain, 40 days, and then 40 days of reconciliation and coming back down, and then another 40 days of up on the mountain for the second set of tablets. It comes down, right, that the first set of the tablets and the difference between the first set of tablets and the second set of tablets can be seen in the essence of Yom Kippur. That they're not about perfection. They're not about these being hewn by the hand of God, but they are about imperfection and repair and reconciliation. And maybe with all of that, there is something that is more lasting, that can contain the possibility for renewal and repair. And so I want to wish everybody a Shabbat Shalom. May we end this year on a strong note and a Shana Tova. It was a real privilege to study Torah with you this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yasher Koach.
Yosef.